That night, I realized one dinner could destroy a family, or save it. My name is Esther Coleman. I'm 63 years old, and this is the story I kept to myself for far too long. Not because I was ashamed, but because I wanted to believe it wasn't happening. I wanted to believe that the woman my son married still had room in her heart for me. I've lived in this house for 37 years. Every corner holds a memory. The kitchen counter where I taught my son Daniel to crack eggs without getting shells in the bowl. The living room window where I used to wait for him to come home from school. My heart lighter the moment I saw his backpack bouncing down the sidewalk. The dining table, oak, sturdy, with 6 chairs, where we celebrated birthdays, Thanksgivings, and quiet Tuesday nights that meant everything. That table became the stage for my humiliation. But it also became the place where I learned that love, real love, doesn't stay silent when someone you cherish is being hurt. I raised Daniel alone after his father passed when he was 12. Heart attack, sudden. One moment we were a family of 3, the next, just the 2 of us. I worked 2 jobs, morning shift at the hospital as a nurse, evenings cleaning offices downtown. I never missed a parent-teacher meeting. I never let him see me cry, even though some nights I sobbed into my pillow until my chest ached. He grew into a good man, kind, respectful, the kind of son who called me every Sunday even after he moved out. When he introduced me to Rebecca, I wanted so badly to love her. She was beautiful, sharp features, confident smile, the kind of woman who walked into a room and made people notice. Daniel's eyes lit up when he looked at her, and that was enough for me. At first, she was sweet. She'd ask about my shifts at the hospital, compliment my cooking, even hug me goodbye. But after they got married and moved into my house, just temporarily, Mom, until we find our own place, things changed. Small things at first. She'd rearrange my kitchen without asking. She'd sigh when I spoke. She'd cut me off mid-sentence to talk about her day. I told myself it was normal. Adjustments. 2 women sharing one kitchen. But deep down, I felt it. The coldness creeping in. The way she looked at me like I was a piece of furniture she wished wasn't there. Sometimes we trust people we shouldn't. Have you ever been disappointed by someone you loved? Tell me your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. That dinner, the one that changed everything, started like any other evening. I was setting the table. 6 plates, even though only 3 of us lived there now. Old habit. The oak table had seen so much love. I ran my hand across its surface, feeling the small dent where Daniel once dropped a toy truck when he was 5. Rebecca came in, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. She glanced at the table and frowned. "Why do you always set so many plates, Esther?" I smiled softly. "Just in case. You never know when someone might stop by." She rolled her eyes and walked away. I should have known then, but I wasn't ready to see it yet. Before everything fell apart, there was a time when my home felt like a sanctuary. I remember the Sunday mornings best. Daniel would wake up early, even as a teenager, and join me in the kitchen. We'd make pancakes together, him flipping them too high, me laughing when one landed on the floor. The house smelled like maple syrup and butter and something I can only describe as home. He'd talk to me about everything. His dreams of becoming an architect. The girl he liked in 10th grade who didn't know he existed. His fears about college, about leaving me alone. I'd listen, my hands busy kneading dough or stirring soup, but my heart entirely his. "Mom," he said once when he was 17, "when I grow up and have my own family, I want them to feel exactly like this. Safe, loved." I kissed his forehead. "Then you'll be a wonderful father." Those years weren't perfect. Money was tight. Some months I had to choose between fixing the leaking roof or buying Daniel new shoes. But we had each other, and that was enough. More than enough. When he graduated college, I cried. Not sad tears, proud ones. He'd worked so hard, juggling part-time jobs and late-night study sessions. He got a job at a respected architecture firm, and I knew his father would have been so proud. "I'm going to take care of you now, Mom," he told me at his graduation. "You've given me everything. It's my turn." I shook my head. "You don't owe me anything, sweetheart. Seeing you happy is all I need." But he insisted. He started helping with bills. He'd come over every weekend to fix things around the house. A loose cabinet door, a squeaky hinge, the garden fence that kept falling over. We'd have dinner together, just the 2 of us, at that oak table. He'd tell me about his projects, and I'd tell him about the patients at the hospital who made me laugh or broke my heart. Those dinners were sacred. Then he met Rebecca at a work event. She was a marketing consultant, sharp and ambitious. Daniel was smitten. He brought her to meet me 3 months into their relationship. She arrived in a sleek black dress, carrying a bottle of wine I couldn't pronounce. "Mrs. Coleman," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "Daniel talks about you constantly. I'm so glad to finally meet you." I liked her immediately. Or maybe I wanted to like her so badly that I ignored the small signs. The way she barely touched the pot roast I'd spent hours preparing. The way she checked her phone during dinner. The way she laughed a little too loud when Daniel mentioned I still kept his childhood drawings on the fridge. "That's so sweet," she said. But her eyes didn't smile. They got engaged 6 months later. I helped plan the wedding, even though Rebecca had very specific ideas about everything. She wanted a modern ceremony. Minimal flowers, no traditional vows, a DJ instead of a band. It wasn't what I would have chosen, but it wasn't my wedding. Daniel was happy. That was all that mattered. As I tell you this, I wonder where you're listening from. Write your city below so I can feel a little closer to you. The wedding was beautiful in its own way. Rebecca looked stunning. Daniel looked nervous and joyful all at once. When they said "I do," I cried. I thought about his father, about how much he would have loved to see this moment. After the honeymoon, they asked if they could stay with me temporarily while they saved for a down payment. Of course I said yes. This was my son. My home was his home. But the moment Rebecca's suitcases crossed the threshold, something shifted. The house that had always felt like mine started to feel like I was a guest in it. Little by little, she began to take over. The first time Rebecca made me feel small, I told myself I was being too sensitive. It was a Tuesday evening, about 2 weeks after they moved in. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans, comfort food. The kind of meal that had fed Daniel through exam weeks and heartbreaks and long winters. Rebecca walked in, glanced at the stove, and wrinkled her nose. "You're making meatloaf again?" I paused, spatula in hand. "It's Daniel's favorite. He's 32, Esther. He doesn't need to eat like a college student anymore." She opened the fridge and pulled out a bottle of sparkling water. "We're trying to eat healthier. Less red meat, more vegetables, you know?" I nodded slowly. "I can make a salad, too." "That would be great." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That night, Daniel ate 2 helpings of meatloaf and barely touched the salad. Rebecca pushed her food around her plate and scrolled through her phone. I felt like I'd failed some test I didn't know I was taking. The next week, she rearranged the living room. I came home from my shift at the hospital to find my mother's rocking chair, the one I'd nursed Daniel in as a baby, moved to the basement. "It didn't really fit with the aesthetic," Rebecca explained when I asked. "I'm going for a more modern look. You don't mind, do you?" I minded, but I didn't say anything. Daniel had always been the peacemaker. "Mom's pretty easygoing," he told Rebecca once when I was within earshot. "She's not particular about stuff like that." But I was particular. That rocking chair held memories Rebecca would never understand. The late nights when Daniel had colic and I'd rock him for hours, singing lullabies off-key until he finally slept. The evenings after his father died when I'd sit in that chair and let myself cry where no one could see. Now it was in the basement, collecting dust. I started spending more time in my bedroom. It felt safer. I'd eat dinner with them, clean up the kitchen, then retreat upstairs with a book or the television on low. Rebecca and Daniel would stay downstairs, talking in voices I couldn't quite hear. Sometimes I'd catch fragments of their conversations. "She's always hovering. Just needs to get used to having us here. When are we going to get our own place?" I wondered if Daniel defended me in those moments. I wanted to believe he did. One Saturday morning, I came downstairs to find Rebecca repainting the hallway. The soft beige I'd chosen years ago was being covered in stark white. "I hope you don't mind," she said, not looking up from the paint roller. "This color is so outdated. White makes everything look cleaner, more spacious." I stood there in my bathrobe, watching her erase another piece of my home. "It looks nice," I said quietly. That was the problem. I kept saying things looked nice when they didn't. I kept swallowing my discomfort like bitter medicine. I kept telling myself this was temporary, that soon they'd move out and my house would feel like mine again. But deep down, I was starting to understand something I didn't want to face. Rebecca didn't just want to redecorate. She wanted me gone. The oak dining table remained unchanged, though. 6 chairs, even if only 3 of us sat there. I'd set it every evening, and every evening Rebecca would sigh at the empty place settings. "Why do you do that?" she asked once. "Habit," I said. What I didn't say, because this table has always been big enough for everyone. Because my home has always had room for one more. Because I was raised to believe that love doesn't count chairs, it just adds them. But Rebecca counted everything. Every dish I washed, every light I left on, every moment I existed in her space, and I was beginning to realize, in her mind, it was all her space now. I tried to convince myself that things would get better, that Rebecca just needed time to adjust, that I was being too sensitive, too old-fashioned, too much in the way. I started making myself smaller. I'd wake up earlier to use the bathroom before they woke up, so I wouldn't inconvenience them. I'd skip breakfast if Rebecca was in the kitchen, waiting until she left for work. I'd turn my television down so low I could barely hear it. I became a ghost in my own home, drifting through rooms I'd lived in for decades, like I was the guest who'd overstayed her welcome. Daniel didn't seem to notice, or maybe he noticed but didn't know what to say. He'd kiss my forehead before leaving for work, ask how my day was at dinner, but there was a distance growing between us that I didn't know how to cross. Rebecca was always there, always between us, redirecting conversations, interrupting, pulling his attention away. One evening, I overheard them arguing in their bedroom. "The walls in this old house are thin. Your mother is always underfoot," Rebecca said. "I can't relax in my own home. Babe, it's her house. We're living with her, remember? She's been incredibly generous." "Generous?" Rebecca's voice rose. "Daniel, we pay rent. We pay for groceries. This isn't charity, and she treats me like I'm some kind of intruder. She doesn't. She does. The way she looks at me when I move anything. The way she still sets the table like we're expecting company. It's passive-aggressive, Daniel. Can't you see that?" I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling my heart pound. Was I passive-aggressive? Was I making Rebecca feel unwelcome without realizing it? Daniel's voice was quieter. "I'll talk to her." But he never did, and I never brought it up. We both pretended we hadn't heard what we'd heard, seen what we'd seen. The discovery came slowly, like fog rolling in. Small moments that accumulated into an undeniable truth. Rebecca forgot to tell me when they were having friends over. I'd come downstairs in my nightgown to find 6 strangers in my living room, and Rebecca would look at me with barely concealed annoyance. "Oh, did we wake you?" She started locking the bathroom door when she showered, even though I'd never walked in on anyone. When I mentioned needing to use it before my shift, she snapped, "Wait your turn like everyone else." She threw away my mother's ceramic fruit bowl because it was taking up counter space. I found it in the garbage, cracked down the middle. When I asked about it, she shrugged. "It was an accident. I'll buy you a new one." She never did. But the worst part, the part that hurt most, was watching Daniel change. He stopped coming upstairs to say goodnight. He stopped asking about my day with genuine interest. He stopped fixing little things around the house. When I mentioned the leaking faucet in my bathroom, he said, "I'll get to it when I have time." But weeks passed, and the faucet kept dripping. Rebecca had him. Completely. I still wonder if I did the right thing. What about you? What would you have done in my place? One Sunday afternoon, I found Daniel in the garage, organizing tools. I brought him a glass of lemonade, something I used to do when he was young and helping his father with projects. "Thank you, Mom." He took the glass but didn't meet my eyes. "Daniel, can I ask you something?" He stiffened slightly. "Sure. Are you happy?" He looked at me then, confused. "Of course I'm happy. Why would you ask that? You seem different, distant." "I'm not distant, Mom. I'm just busy. Work's been crazy, and Rebecca and I are trying to save money, and—" He stopped, running his hand through his hair. "I'm fine. Everything's fine." But it wasn't fine, and we both knew it. I squeezed his shoulder gently. "I love you, sweetheart. I just want you to know that. I love you too, Mom." His voice cracked slightly, and for a moment, I saw my little boy again. The one who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The one who cried when his goldfish died and made me promise we'd bury it properly in the backyard. But then his phone buzzed. Rebecca's name flashed on the screen, and just like that, he was gone again. I walked back into the house, and that's when I noticed something I'd been too blind to see before. All the photos of Daniel and me had been removed from the walls. The one from his high school graduation, the one from our trip to the mountains when he was 16, the one of us at his father's grave on the anniversary of his death. In their place were wedding photos, pictures of Daniel and Rebecca, just the two of them, as if I'd never existed. I stood in the hallway, staring at the empty spaces where my son and I used to smile, and I understood. This wasn't about redecorating. This wasn't about adjusting. This was about erasing me, and I had let it happen. The night it all came crashing down started like any other Thursday. I had worked a double shift at the hospital. My feet ached, my back was stiff, and all I wanted was a quiet dinner and maybe a warm bath. I came home around 6:30, still in my scrubs, carrying my tired body through the front door like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The smell of roasted chicken filled the house. Rebecca was cooking. That was unusual. She rarely cooked, preferring takeout or Daniel's attempts at recreating restaurant meals. I felt a small flutter of hope. Maybe she was making an effort. Maybe things were changing. "Something smells wonderful," I said, setting my purse on the entry table. Rebecca glanced at me from the kitchen. "I'm making dinner for Daniel. He had a rough day at work." "That's nice of you," I said, heading toward the stairs. "I'll just go change and—" "Actually, Esther, we're having a private dinner tonight. Just the two of us." I stopped on the third step. "Oh, of course. I'll eat later." I wasn't hurt. Not yet. I understood couples needing alone time, but something in her tone made my stomach tighten. I changed into comfortable clothes and went to my room, telling myself I'd heat up some leftovers once they finished eating. I tried to read, but I couldn't focus. I could hear them downstairs. Rebecca's laughter, the clinking of dishes, music playing softly. Around 7:30, my hunger got the better of me. Surely they were done by now. I walked downstairs quietly, not wanting to intrude. But when I entered the dining room, they were still at the oak table. Candles, wine, the good china that I only used for holidays. Daniel looked up and smiled. "Hey, Mom, did you just get home?" "A while ago. I didn't want to interrupt your dinner." "You're not interrupting," he said, starting to stand. "Are you hungry? There's plenty." "She's not eating with us, Daniel." Rebecca's voice was sharp, final. "I told her we were having a private dinner." Daniel glanced between us, confusion crossing his face. "Babe, it's okay. Mom can join us." "No, Daniel. I planned this dinner for us. Your mother can eat later." The words hung in the air like smoke. I felt my cheeks burn. My throat tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "It's all right, sweetheart. You two enjoy your evening. I'll just make a sandwich." I turned to leave, but Rebecca wasn't finished. "Actually, Esther, I've been meaning to talk to you about something." Her voice had taken on a different quality. Cold, deliberate. "You need to stop hovering around us all the time. We need our space." "I'm not hovering," I said quietly, still facing away. "I've been giving you space." "No, you haven't. You're always here. Always in the kitchen. Always in the living room. Always present." She said the last word like it was poison. "This is supposed to be our home too, but it feels like we're living in a museum to your past." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "Rebecca, come on." "No, Daniel, she needs to hear this. We're adults. We're married. We can't keep tiptoeing around her feelings." I turned around slowly. "I understand you want your own space. Maybe it's time you found your own place." Rebecca's eyes flashed. "Oh, so now you're kicking us out?" "I'm not kicking anyone out. I'm just saying—" "You're saying you want your precious son all to yourself. You can't stand that he has a wife now, that I'm his priority." "That's not true." My voice was shaking now. "I've always wanted Daniel to be happy. I've never tried to come between you." "Really?" Rebecca stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Then why do you still set 6 places at the table like you're expecting his father to come back? Why do you look at me like I'm not good enough for him? Why do you sigh every time I make a decision about this house?" "This is my house, Rebecca." The words came out before I could stop them. Quiet, but firm. Her face twisted into something ugly. Something I'd never seen before. "Your house? We pay rent, Esther. We pay for groceries. We pay for utilities. What exactly makes this yours anymore?" "Rebecca, that's enough." Daniel finally found his voice, standing up. "Mom, I'm sorry." She didn't mean, I meant every word. Rebecca's voice rose, sharp and cruel. I'm tired of living with someone who treats me like an intruder. I'm tired of walking on eggshells. I'm tired of pretending this arrangement works. My chest ached, my hands trembled, but I held her gaze. I have never treated you as an intruder. I welcomed you into my home. I've tried. You've tried nothing, she was yelling now. You just sit there, judging me, making me feel like nothing I do is right. You with your sad little face and your pathetic routines and your constant presence. Rebecca! Daniel moved toward her, but she jerked away. She picked up her wine glass and took a long drink, her hand shaking with rage. Then she looked at me with pure contempt. You want to know what I really think, Esther? You're pathetic. A lonely old woman who can't let go of her son, who can't accept that he's moved on, that he has a real life now. The words hit me like physical blows. But I didn't move, didn't cry, didn't speak. Rebecca grabbed an empty plate and shoved it into my hands. Here, since you're so desperate to eat, go eat in the kitchen where you belong. I only want my real family at this table. The plate was cold in my hands. The room was spinning, but somehow I found my voice. I am his family. You're his past. Rebecca stepped closer, her face inches from mine. And the sooner you accept that, the better off we'll all be. Now go. Go eat in the kitchen, you clumsy old woman. Get out of my sight. I looked at Daniel. His face was pale, his mouth open, but no words came out. He stood frozen, caught between his mother and his wife. And in that moment, I saw how much he'd changed, how much she'd changed him. I walked slowly toward the kitchen, still holding the empty plate. My vision was blurred. My body felt like it was moving through water. I could hear Rebecca behind me, muttering something to Daniel, her voice dripping with satisfaction. I sat down at the small kitchen table, the one I'd bought at a garage sale 30 years ago, the one Daniel and I used to eat breakfast at before school. I set the plate down. My hands were still trembling. I didn't make a sandwich. I didn't eat anything. I just sat there in the kitchen, in the house I'd built with love and sacrifice, and I felt something inside me break, but I didn't cry. Not yet, because minutes later, I heard the front door open, and everything was about to change. I heard Daniel's voice before I saw him. What the hell is going on here? He wasn't supposed to be home. He'd told Rebecca he was working late on a big presentation. But there he was, standing in the entrance to the dining room, his briefcase still in his hand, his face a mixture of confusion and growing anger. Rebecca looked up, startled. Daniel? I thought you weren't coming home until... I finished early. His eyes moved from her to the table, still set with candles and wine and the good china. Then to the kitchen, where I sat alone in the dim light. Why is my mother eating in the kitchen? She's not eating. Why is she in there and you're in here? His voice was rising, something I rarely heard. Daniel had always been gentle, slow to anger. What happened? I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady. It's all right, Daniel. Rebecca wanted a private dinner with you. I was just giving you space. Space? He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the moment everything clicked. The redness around my eyes, the way I was holding myself together like broken glass. The empty plate still sitting on the kitchen table. He turned to Rebecca. What did you do? I didn't do anything. I just told her we needed our own time together. That's not unreasonable. What did you do? The air in the house changed. I'd never heard that tone from my son before. Rebecca must have heard it too, because her confident mask slipped for just a second. I may have spoken more harshly than I intended. But Daniel, you have to understand, I've been patient for months, living here, dealing with her constant presence, her judgment. Her judgment? Daniel set his briefcase down with a thud. This is her house, Rebecca. Her home that she's opened to us. What the hell could she possibly be judging you for? She's always... No. Daniel walked into the dining room, and I followed, standing in the doorway. I want to know exactly what you said to my mother, and I want the truth. Rebecca's composure was cracking. I told her we needed space, that she needed to stop hovering. And? She glanced at me, then back at Daniel. And I suggested she eat in the kitchen so we could have our private dinner. Suggested? My voice was barely a whisper, but Daniel heard it. "Mom?" He turned to me. "Tell me exactly what happened." I didn't want to. I didn't want to be the one to drive a wedge between them. But standing there, looking at my son's face, the face I'd kissed 1,000 times, the face I'd watched grow from boy to man, I couldn't lie. "She told me I was pathetic," I said quietly. "That I was a lonely old woman who couldn't let go. She told me to go eat in the kitchen where I belonged. She said she only wanted her real family at the table." I paused, my voice breaking. "She called me a clumsy old woman and told me to get out of her sight." The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel's face had gone white, then red. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. When he spoke, his voice was terrifyingly calm. "Is that true, Rebecca?" "Daniel, is that true?" Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "I was angry. I didn't mean—" "You called my mother pathetic?" He took a step toward her, and she backed up. "You told her she wasn't family? You sent her to eat alone in the kitchen of her own house?" "Daniel, please." I lost my temper. "No." His voice cracked like thunder. "No, Rebecca. You don't get to blame this on your temper. You don't get to justify treating my mother like she's nothing." He turned and walked into the kitchen. I watched as he picked up the empty plate I'd been holding, looked at it for a long moment, then carried it back to the dining room. He set it down at the head of the table, my usual spot, the seat I'd been sitting in for 37 years. "Mom," he said gently, gesturing to the chair, "please sit down." "Daniel, I don't want to cause—" "Please." His eyes were wet now. "Please sit down." I walked to the table on shaking legs and sat in my chair. Daniel pulled it in for me, the way his father used to. Then he turned to Rebecca, who was standing there with tears streaming down her face. "This is my mother's house," he said, each word deliberate and clear. "She owns it. She's lived here for 37 years. She raised me here after my father died, working 2 jobs to give me everything I needed. She never asked for anything in return. And when we needed a place to stay, she opened her door without hesitation." "I know that, but—" "I'm not finished." His voice was steel. "You will never speak to her that way again. You will never treat her like she's in the way. You will never, ever tell her she's not family. Because she's my mother, Rebecca. And that means she's more family to me than anyone else in this world." Rebecca was sobbing now. "Daniel, I'm your wife. Yes, you are. And I love you. But love doesn't excuse cruelty. It doesn't give you the right to humiliate someone who's done nothing but try to make you feel welcome." He pulled out the chair next to mine and sat down. Then he looked at Rebecca, still standing, still crying. "You have 2 choices," he said quietly. "You can apologize to my mother, genuinely, sincerely, and you can start showing her the respect she deserves. Or you can find somewhere else to stay tonight while you think about what kind of person you want to be." "You're choosing her over me?" Rebecca's voice was high, desperate. "I'm not choosing anyone. I'm drawing a line. This is not negotiable." Rebecca looked at me, her face twisted with hurt and humiliation. I saw the calculation in her eyes, the weighing of options, the realization that she'd pushed too far. "I'm sorry," she whispered, but she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Daniel. "Tell her," Daniel said. "Not me." Slowly, Rebecca turned to face me. Her tears were real, but I couldn't tell if they were tears of remorse or tears of a trapped animal. "I'm sorry, Esther. I shouldn't have said those things." It wasn't enough. We both knew it, but it was a start. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Daniel reached over and took my hand. His hand was warm, solid, real. For the first time in months, I felt like I had my son back. But I also knew something had broken that night, something that couldn't be fully repaired. Rebecca would apologize. She would be careful for a while. But the contempt I'd seen in her eyes, that was real. That was who she was when she thought no one was watching. And Daniel had seen it too. Life has a way of teaching lessons, even when we don't ask for them. The weeks that followed that terrible dinner were strange and fragile. Rebecca apologized again the next morning, more sincerely this time. She offered to help me reorganize the kitchen, to bring my mother's rocking chair back upstairs, to rehang the photos she'd taken down. I accepted some gestures and declined others. I wasn't punishing her. I just needed time. Daniel was different too, gentler with me, more present. He started coming upstairs to say goodnight again, bringing me tea when I had long shifts, fixing the leaking faucet without being asked. He was trying to rebuild something that had crumbled without him noticing. But the damage was done. Not just to me, to their marriage. I could hear them at night, through the thin walls. Not arguing exactly, but something worse. Silence. The kind of silence that grows when trust has been broken. Rebecca would try to talk to him, and he'd respond in short sentences. She'd reach for his hand, and he'd pull away, not dramatically, but enough. Small rejections that added up. She started spending more time away from the house, working late, meeting friends, shopping. Anything to avoid the awkwardness that now lived in every room. And when she was home, she was careful around me. Too careful. She'd ask permission before using the kitchen. She'd apologize for small things that didn't need apologies. She was trying to erase what she'd done by becoming invisible herself. But you can't erase words like that. They live in the spaces between people forever. 3 months after that night, Daniel came to me with news. Mom, Rebecca, and I found an apartment. We're moving out next month. I felt relief and sadness in equal measure. That's wonderful, sweetheart. You need your own space. He sat down at the kitchen table, the small one where this had all begun, and rubbed his face with both hands. I don't know if we're going to make it, Mom. Daniel, I can't stop thinking about that night, about what she said to you, about how long it must have been going on for her to explode like that. He looked at me with tired eyes. I feel like I'm married to someone I don't really know. People make mistakes, I said, even though part of me wanted to agree with him. Do they? Or do they just show you who they really are when they're comfortable enough to stop pretending? He shook his head. I keep thinking about all the little things I ignored. The way she'd roll her eyes when you talked. The way she'd change the subject whenever I mentioned you. I told myself I was imagining it. But I wasn't, was I? I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe she felt insecure. Maybe she thought she was competing for your attention. You're being too kind. You always are. He reached across the table and took my hand. I'm sorry, Mom. I should have protected you. I should have seen what was happening. You're here now. That's what matters. But we both knew it wasn't enough. Some wounds don't heal just because you acknowledge them. They moved out on a gray Saturday in November. I helped them pack, even though Rebecca barely spoke to me. When the last box was loaded into the truck, Daniel hugged me for a long time. I'll visit every week, he promised. I know you will. Rebecca stood by the truck, not meeting my eyes. I walked over to her and she stiffened. I hope you'll be happy in your new place, I said. She nodded. Thank you. A pause. Esther, I really am sorry. For everything. I know you are. But sorry doesn't erase the past. It just acknowledges it. They drove away, and I stood in the driveway until the truck disappeared around the corner. Then I went inside my house, my quiet, empty house, and sat at the oak dining table. 6 chairs, just like always. I ran my hand across the wood, feeling the small dent where Daniel had dropped his toy truck when he was 5. Life went on. Daniel visited, just like he promised, sometimes alone, sometimes with Rebecca. When she came, she was polite, distant. The warmth she'd faked in the beginning was gone, replaced by careful neutrality. We existed around each other, but we never connected. A year passed, then 2. Daniel stopped wearing his wedding ring. He never told me directly, but I knew. The way he'd look sad when he thought I wasn't watching. The way he'd stay longer during visits, like he didn't want to go home. The way he'd mention couples counseling, then stop mentioning it. 3 years after that terrible dinner, he came to see me on a Tuesday evening. He sat at the oak table in the same chair he'd sat in that night when everything changed. Mom, Rebecca and I are getting divorced. I wasn't surprised. I'd watched their marriage slowly hollow out, like a tree rotting from the inside. But I still felt sad for him. For the life he'd imagined, that wasn't going to happen. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm not. He looked at me, and his eyes were clear. I should have left 2 years ago. I kept trying to fix something that was broken from the start. He paused. She never really wanted a family. She wanted an audience, someone to witness her life and tell her she was special. What will you do now? Move forward. Figure out who I am without her. He smiled slightly. Maybe move back home for a little while, if you'll have me. I started crying then. Not sad tears, relieved ones. There's always room for you here, Daniel. always. And there was. Because love doesn't count chairs. It just adds them. Rebecca moved to another state after the divorce. Daniel heard through mutual friends that she'd gotten remarried quickly to someone with money and status. He didn't seem surprised. "She'll do the same thing to him eventually," he said. "That's who she is." Years passed. Daniel rebuilt his life. He dated carefully, wary of making the same mistake. And through it all, he stayed close to me. We had Sunday dinners at the oak table, just like old times. We talked about everything and nothing. We remembered his father. We laughed. One day, out of nowhere, Daniel got a message from an old coworker. Rebecca had reached out to him, asking about Daniel. She'd left her second husband. She was living in a small apartment alone. She wanted to apologize, to explain, to maybe reconnect. Daniel showed me the message. "What do you think, Mom?" I thought about that night, the words she'd said, the contempt in her eyes, the way she'd tried to erase me from my own home. But I also thought about karma, about how life teaches its own lessons, about how the cruelty we give out often comes back to us in ways we never expect. "I think she's lonely," I said quietly. "I think she's reaping what she sowed." Should I respond? "Only if you want to. But remember, Daniel, some people don't change. They just get better at hiding who they are." He didn't respond to the message, and I knew somehow that Rebecca was sitting in her small apartment, scrolling through old photos, wondering where everything had gone wrong, wondering why she was alone, wondering why life felt so empty. She'd called me a lonely old woman once, but I had my son, I had my home, I had peace, and she had nothing but the consequences of her choices. That's not revenge. That's just karma. I'm 70 years old now. 7 years have passed since that terrible dinner, and I still think about it sometimes. Not with anger anymore, with understanding. Rebecca taught me something important, even if she never meant to. You can't make someone love you the way you deserve. You can't convince someone to see your worth if they've already decided you're worthless. And you certainly can't change someone who doesn't want to change. But you can choose how you respond. You can choose dignity over retaliation. You can choose to hold on to your truth even when someone tries to take it from you. That night, sitting alone in my kitchen while she celebrated my humiliation in the next room, I could have become bitter. I could have made Daniel choose between us. I could have thrown them out, raged, demanded justice. But I didn't. I stayed silent. I waited. And life did the rest. Daniel lives nearby now, in a modest apartment with a small balcony where he grows tomatoes. He comes over 3 times a week for dinner. We sit at the oak table, still 6 chairs, old habits die hard, and we talk about his new projects, his new life, the woman he's been dating who treats him like he matters. "You'd like her, Mom," he told me last Sunday. "She's kind. She asks about you all the time. She actually wants to meet you. I'd love to meet her too." And I meant it. Because I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not afraid of being replaced or forgotten or erased. I know who I am. A mother. A survivor. A woman who raised a good man despite everything life threw at us. The house is quieter now, but it's mine again. I brought my mother's rocking chair back upstairs. I rehung the photos. I painted the hallway back to its original beige. Every corner holds a memory, and I'm no longer afraid of them being covered up. Sometimes I wonder about Rebecca. I heard through Daniel's friends that she's on her 3rd marriage now, that she complains constantly about feeling misunderstood, about being surrounded by people who don't appreciate her. Part of me feels sorry for her. Part of me thinks she'll never understand that the common denominator in all her failed relationships is herself. But mostly, I don't think about her at all. Because here's what I've learned in my 70 years. Life always keeps its score. The people who treat others with cruelty eventually find themselves alone, wondering why no one wants to stay. The people who demand respect without giving it discover that respect is a bridge, not a wall. And the people who try to erase someone's existence often end up erased themselves. That's not revenge. That's just how the world works. What you put out, you get back. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. I still set 6 places at the table sometimes, even though it's usually just Daniel and me. Not because I'm stuck in the past, but because I believe in abundance, in making room, in keeping the door open for love, even when you've been hurt. That oak table has seen so much. Birthdays and funerals, celebrations and heartbreaks, the laughter of a little boy who grew into a good man, the tears of that man when his marriage fell apart, the quiet companionship of a mother and son who found their way back to each other. It's held us through everything, and it will hold us through whatever comes next. If you've stayed with me through this story, thank you. Thank you for listening to an old woman's memories. Thank you for understanding that sometimes the biggest battles aren't fought with raised voices, but with quiet dignity. If you're going through something similar, if someone is trying to make you small, trying to convince you that you don't matter, trying to erase your place in your own life, please hear me. You matter. Your presence matters. Your history matters. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Stand firm. Stay kind. Let karma do its work, and keep setting extra places at your table, because life has a funny way of filling them when you least expect it. Daniel is bringing his girlfriend to dinner tomorrow. Her name is Claire, and she asked if she could bring flowers for the house. I said yes, of course. I'm making pot roast, the same one Rebecca once wrinkled her nose at, because Daniel told Claire it was his favorite and she wanted to try it. That's the difference. That's what real love looks like. It shows up. It asks. It wants to know what matters to the people you care about. I'm setting 7 places tomorrow night because Claire has a daughter, a little girl named Sophie who Daniel says is shy but sweet. And if this relationship grows into something real, if this little girl becomes part of our family, I want her to know from the very first dinner, there's always room at my table. There's always a place for her. There's always space for love to grow. That's my legacy. Not the pain, not the humiliation, not the years of being made to feel small. My legacy is this: a home where love is abundant, a table with extra chairs, a heart that remained open even after being hurt. If my story helps one woman open her eyes, stand up for herself, or realize that her worth isn't determined by how others treat her, then every painful moment was worth it. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and turn on the bell to hear more stories of women who turned pain into wisdom. Every day, one woman, one life lesson. Share this story with someone you love. Sometimes one story can change an entire day. Life is long and people are complicated. But love, real love, is simple. It makes room, it listens, it stays, and it always, always finds its way back home. God bless you, and see you next time.